Today, we're going to show you some ways you can treat your concussion at home. I'm here at Cognitive FX in Provo, Utah. They're one of the top concussion clinics in the world. And I'm hugely thankful to them for having me in for a set of 3 booster days here about 2 years after my first treatment with them for my concussion, which was 5 days long. They were very generous in giving me access to their clinic and their treatment in return for making a few videos about my experience. We'll start by sitting down with Dr. Alina Fong, one of the founders of the clinic, and she'll take us through a bit of the concepts and framework underpinning their treatment. And then we'll go into specific techniques and exercises you can do at home. Well, Dr. Fong, thank you so much for having me back to Cognitive FX. You know this, but for everybody else watching, it really was the turning point in my recovery with my concussion. You know, I was probably 9 months or a year out from my injury before I came to here, and it was really the inflection point. 6 months later, I would say I was probably 90-95%. You know, I've shared my story online, and the number one question I get from people is, what is the treatment like? What parts of it can I do at home? You know, I'm not ready to come into the clinic or I can't afford it. Kind of show people both what the treatment is like, but also, you know, you send me home and you send your patients home with an at-home packet of exercises to do at home. Kind of walk through those kinds of things.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming as well. It's always a joy to have you. And the other thing I want to thank you for is really highlighting and shining a spotlight on how insidious these brain injuries are. Yeah. Because people that look at you, even back then when you were first injured, when you are articulate, when you are intelligent, you know, when you are highly motivated and capable, you're the type of patient that just kind of slides under the radar and ends up getting kind of gaslighted almost.
Oh, absolutely. By many doctors.
By many doctors. And is it really psychological? Should I start taking these psych meds that are being prescribed to me left and right? And I'm here to say no.
I got overprescribed at the point that I could hardly go for a walk. I was so doped up. And it literally just made me worse.
Yes. We are the only concussion clinic that actually focuses on more of the chronic, more complex cases.
I was at a concussion specialist before I came to you guys. You know, I had done a bunch of research on my own and came across the Buffalo treadmill test, which for everybody watching, it's quite simple. You get on a treadmill, you put on a heart rate monitor, and you gradually increase your exercise until you start feeling symptoms. You record the heart rate at which you first start symptoms, and then you exercise at 80% of that. And the idea is that you gradually grow it over time. And one of the things that was very hard for me is like, well, I was getting symptomatic going for a walk at a snail's pace. And I came to them with this question of how much is too much? If I overdo it, is that a problem? You know, and I got the answer, use your brain to heal your brain. Listen to your body.
Listen to your body, listen to your brain.
What does that mean? Like, I'm listening to my body and I'm telling you I'm symptomatic. I think to be clear, it's important to point out there's a huge body of research. And you guys are building on that body of research. But I think one of the big differences in my experience was really making it actionable, right? And getting very specific about, you know, things like exercise, right? Like the Buffalo treadmill test was a great starting point. I don't think it's nearly as good as what you guys are doing.
So one of the basic tenets and what really sets us apart is, number one, this imaging that we have. When a brain is injured, okay, when you imagine that there's swelling or inflammation in the brain, I like to think of it like, you know, you have a big bruise on your arm, let's say. So that area becomes kind of red and then purple, okay? Yeah. And we know that blood is not flowing through that area very efficiently. It's swollen. Well, your brain is so much more fragile than your arm. Yeah. Imagine areas of swelling in numerous parts of your brain. So your brain kind of, in a simplistic way, instead of being able to go from point A to point B, has to reroute and maybe go from point A to point B. Okay, that is an energy crisis because your brain has to use exponentially more energy. Oh. Now that you're 3 years post your injury, your brain is actually not swollen anymore. However, as smart as your brain is, it's not smart enough to say, oh, the bridges are open again, the freeways are open again. It can't do that without me going in and saying, okay, let's try to flood water through the system, and let's kind of force your way through the simplest path.
So you're getting these kind of dormant parts of the brain where you've routed everything around it, including blood flow, not just neurons, right?
Yes, yeah. So when we see a second brain scan and we show, wow, blood is flowing more readily to these areas and network communication is better, that is the end result that we can see on imaging of your brain being more efficient.
Right. So let's talk about your protocol for increasing activity, regrowing neural pathways,
Reforging pathways, yes.
re-regulating. You have a kind of a 3-step process, right?
We do. And one thing I want to clarify, I get asked by patients and even by other doctors,
Yeah.
there's no way you can get this type of result in a week, And I say,
Right.
well, yes, we can. And the reason why is because we're dealing with a structurally normal brain. Like most of our patients, they don't have any tumors. We're not dealing with cephalomalia.
We're not dealing with missing parts of the brain.
Exactly.
Right? There's no, my brain is still more or less intact at a macro scale.
It is more intact,
yeah,
yes.
Right.
Now, for most other clinics, that's their endpoint. They're like,
Right.
okay, well, then you're fine. Right.
Right. You don't have a hole in your head.
Yeah, so
you don't
you're
have
fine.
a brain bleed. So there's nothing we can do.
Well, and for us, that's our starting point because that's
Yeah.
when I say, okay, so we're dealing with a structurally normal brain. How can I push this brain functionally?
Right.
So prepare, activate, and rest is kind of our trademarked kind of step-by-step for
Yeah.
how we increase neuroplasticity
Yeah.
and then activate that brain while your brain is in more plastic state.
Yeah.
But then the third step is an equal part of rest
Yeah.
and kind of accommodation and assimilation of all of these changes that we've just made. So prepare usually has to do with getting your heart rate up, doing some physical exercise.
Yeah.
A lot of the difference is that we kind of know where your heart rate's supposed to be. We know how to push that a little, like little by little.
Yeah.
But we also know how to pull you back.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we do is a lot of high intensity interval training.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll kind of push you, as you
Yeah.
know, then kind of calm you down.
I think we need to acknowledge that there are a lot of exceptions to all of everything we're going to say. There are exceptions
Yes.
to it. So, but broadly, for most patients, it looks like about 45 seconds at a time of really basically as high intensity as you can go on, some kind of cardio equipment. And then sitting down with, having a heart rate monitor on the whole time, using that as biofeedback. So you guys have iPads on the floor where you can see your heart rate,
right.
but you could do it on a watch or something. And then you do a breathing exercise where it's 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, and then a 1 second hold.
Yep.
And obviously, when you've been doing wind sprints on a cardio machine, you can't do that right away. But the goal is to get to a point where you're regulating your breath, where you can do that, and watching your heart rate go down, and then do it again.
I'll get all over again.
Yeah. And about 30 minutes.
Yeah, about 30 minutes. Now, part of this is kind of a two-pronged
Yeah.
because although we really want to try to get some cardiovascular activation,
Yeah.
we're also treating dysautonomia
And central nervous system.
and central nervous system
Yeah.
issues because it's not just I can't exercise. There's another component to this exercise intolerance that doesn't really get talked about a lot, and this is your autonomic nervous system that is out of balance because
And just on high alert.
on high
the whole
alert,
time.
your sympathetic nervous system is interpreting your heart rate as not exercise but as life-threatening.
Right.
Like, I must be running from a bear.
Yeah.
Okay. And so part of why we try to calm you down very quickly is because we're trying to get that parasympathetic nervous system to learn exercise again
Yeah.
and to learn to calm down.
Yeah.
One of the things, a lot of patients will have body temperature dysregulation issues. Even with exercise, and
Yeah.
they can't get their heart rate down, right?
Yeah.
And that really kind of helps trigger this parasympathetic nervous system too. Now, just to be clear, what I don't want is someone rushing now to try to do 45 minutes of high intensity.
Right.
So just
Yeah.
know, this is happening in a very medically, a safe environment. But there are some things that you can do at home. Try a little bit of exercise, try to calm yourself down. Try
Yeah.
a little bit of exercise and try to do some breathing. So try to do some
Which is
intervals.
different than if you go read most of the literature says go do Buffalo treadmill tests. So go 80%, go exercise for 30 minutes at 80%, which, like I said, never worked for me. And I think it probably because of that re-regulation of
The
central nervous
dysautonomia.
system.
You had some dysautonomia issues, and
Yeah.
most patients do. I'm just here to say
Yeah.
that you're not special
No,
in that
no,
way.
I don't think I am. No,
You
I think
are,
pretty much
but-
every patient I've talked to has struggled with that.
Especially by the time you come to me.
Yeah.
Because, again, like John Letty, Barry Willard, Dr. Letty, and Dr. Willard, they deal with more acute concussions, right? And if you
So
catch it
first
then,
month after.
Yeah. You could kind of stop the brain from getting to this dysautonomia, but by the time you come to me, dysautonomia is almost in full effect. So that's the prepare.
Okay, so that's the prepare part.
Okay. Activate. This So with Activate, that's when we have you do different types of cognitive-based therapies, okay? And that could be focusing on your memory performance, your working memory, long-term memory, short-term memory, your focus and attention abilities, your problem-solving abilities, your multitasking abilities, your word-finding abilities. So we kind of get you prepared physically, and then we send you straight into a really intense cognitive therapy program.
And that timing is key, right? It's not go exercise in the morning and do these in the afternoon. It is right away.
It is. So there are different chemicals, which I'm sure that you've read about, like BDNF specifically, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that is released that actually is linked to cognitive awareness, neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So your brain is primed.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I like to suggest to my patients when they go home is, exercise before you have to go to work or do something hard, and then take advantage of that post-exercise cognitive boost, or PECB, that can last for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So if you know something hard is coming up, do that exercise in the morning, and focus on that hard stuff in the morning. And
I've definitely found that works really well for me.
Yeah. None of the things that we're telling you to do, Scotty, are harmful to you. These are things that would benefit even a healthy brain.
Right.
But
which I think there's probably room for I would like to see more people doing this as
like brain optimization.
Brain optimization, preventative, I think all of this stuff applies. You guys have quite the portfolio of these Activate exercises and techniques and things, and it's
point.
Yes.
Like, what is this that I keep hitting my
head?
Yeah.
So describe what this is, because it's a perfect example.
So this is cool. This is the Maverick. We have our patients get inside of it, and there's different lights that go off at different times, and you can set the instructions for yourself as well. And depending on how advanced you are or not, these exercises can get more or less complicated. But we might say, this color hit with your left hand, this color hit with your left foot, and so on and so forth. And in the meantime, you're going to be doing other cognitive tasks.
Yeah. One of the exercises you gave me last time I was here was hit blue lights with your right hand, red lights with your left hand, so that it was opposite what most people think of. And then if it's green, you can hit it with either hand, but then it switches which, left and right. There's a bunch of different skills involved in that, right? Like you're standing in this thing, so you have your peripheral vision and awareness. You have, you're moving and you're reaching and crossing over your body, but also you're trying to remember the rules of where you're at. And then usually you add then something else on top of that, of some sort of verbal task or some sort of reasoning task or something on top of that. One of the ones I remember was tell me the plot of your favorite movie while you're doing this, which really requires a bunch of different parts of your brain to be all active at the same time.
Well, and it shows that you actually got that far. Some patients can't get that far, right? Yes, but yes. And when people ask, well, how is it really different for each patient? Well, it's because your skills and abilities, you progress differently through each therapy as well.
It's tailored to your level.
Yeah.
And so, for those that are trying to recover at home, it's about sort of finding that level that's challenging, but not totally overwhelming.
Exactly.
Right? It's supposed to be hard, and you're not supposed to be good at any of this. I struggle through every single thing you guys have given me, but that's by design, right?
You should be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It should be uncomfortable, but if it's making you crash for days afterward, that's a bit too much. You should be a little uncomfortable and then pull it back. A lot of the key is just to push, and then pull back, and the next time you can push just 5% more and then pull back.
So the idea is to move these pieces from this side to this side as quickly as possible. Okay. The time does cap at 6 minutes. On your mark, get set, go.
Done.
Okay. So I have you 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Okay. That is a pretty good time for your first try.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some numbers, 5 numbers between 0 and 100.
Okay.
Your job is to rearrange them from lowest to highest. 23, 34, 98, 76, 8.
8, 23, 34, 76, and I don't remember what the fifth one is.
Take a stab at it. 98.
That was gonna be my guess.
See, I was like, sometimes you gotta trust yourself,
Yeah, I know.
right?
I should have just gone for
stab
it.
at it.
It was the number in my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard. Like you're like, I have
But
doubt.
I just thought I was making it up.
I
Yeah.
have a doubt, but sometimes you gotta
Yeah.
trust that
Okay.
gut.
All right.
Okay.
There are some things that are very specialized equipment that you guys have here, and this is a good example, but there are some even fancier things. And then there are other things that are, you need a deck of playing cards and something taped to
Sure.
the wall, and
Yes.
you could make
And you
headway.
can do it at home.
Right.
And then, for example, one of the cool things that we have now is Tomar, and I
Yes,
know
I
that,
just did that this morning.
isn't that cool?
It's really cool.
Okay, and
it's something that I was struggling with. It is a weak spot for me of identifying where sounds are coming from.
Yeah.
And you guys gave me snapping as a take-home exercise.
If you're doing this at home, what you can do is close your eyes and have someone snap from like top, middle, bottom, just different sounds or sides, and you can point to where you think it's coming from and then look and see if you're correct.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. Thank you.
So this Tomar, just for the people listening, it is a device that we actually had to create ourselves because there's nothing like it on the market, and we knew that vision was an issue for a lot of patients, but so was sound, tinnitus, not being able to localize. And being able to localize sound is a primitive brain behavior because it's about survival. If you do not know where a sound is coming from that might be threatening, you will likely not survive.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when that auditory processing is affected, again, your brain goes into fight or flight mode. So the last part, the R, is rest, relaxation. Really what it is a time for us to kind of calm that brain down because we don't want your brain to decompensate. You just came out of relaxation, I can share, right?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
I sat in a comfy chair in a dark room. I had headphones on with the brainwaves, the binaural beats, which are fascinating. It's brain magic. It's playing two frequencies that are slightly different in each ear. When you have two slightly different frequencies, you get interference. So you get a beating at a much lower frequency. Well, you're playing them in each ear, so you get the beating in your brain in your auditory processing.
It's almost like a cheater's neurofeedback.
Okay.
Your brain is trying to mimic, in essence, the frequency that you're hearing. So you're hearing either like a theta, delta, gamma type of a frequency. And rather than you try to do it, your body kind of naturally falls into a rhythm.
Naturally adjusts
to that rhythm. It's almost like if you ever are standing next to a woman who's holding a baby and she's kind of rocking back and forth, and then you find you start kind of rocking back and forth. Our brain loves rhythm, and we assimilate to the rhythms around us. So it's a very quick way to kind of get your brain into more of a rest state or sometimes an alert state. There are some where we're like, okay, because you can set these different states, brainwave states. So we have patients, that's something easily that can be done at home as well, where you download this app and look, I know I'm going to go in for a test. I want to put on alert, and I want to kind of be a bit more alert and awake. You're going through this PAR cycle numerous times a day. And a lot of patients say, how can I do this 8-hour-a-day program? I can't even get out of bed.
Right. Which was, pretty much where I was at prior to coming to the program. I'm going, oh my God, this is just going to destroy me. I was pretty surprised at the end of the day one, all of the days. I was like, well, I'm definitely tired, but I'm not tired in the same way. I'm tired of, more like normal tired. I'm not in this like,
Complete
concussion
depletion
crash,
tired, yes.
And I'm not super symptomatic, right? Like, maybe I've got a bit of a headache, but I don't have this raging, migraine level headache. So I think that rest cycle is integral, and I'll put information down below about the Brainwaves app. You guys are also fans of meditation?
Oh, huge. Mindfulness, meditation, and then I know that Dr. Allen introduced you to the CO2 suit. That has really kind of revolutionized some of our rest and relaxation for some of these patients. But Mark, he loves to geek out on that. But that's another way that we rest and do some relaxation. And some people can tolerate the CO2 suit. Some people hate it, and we don't do it. So we have different options. But that rest is such an integral part, and it's just as important as the prepare and the activate, because we need to gear you up for the next therapy.
When you send people, you send them home with this PAR schedule. And generally you recommend an hour a day, like half hour of cardio, half an hour of activation and then some rest.
100%.
And so is that, someone who says, I've got a little bit of lingering symptoms, or I had a recent concussion, is that a reasonable place to start to see if they can self-treat on their own?
Yes, except that 30 minutes a day is because we built you up for 2 weeks to do 30 minutes of exercise, right?
Okay.
So,
So maybe start slow if you're super symptomatic with that. Pull it back.
5 minutes. If you can get out and walk, I mean, honestly, Scotty, in the beginning, if you could get out and walk for 5 minutes, that was a win.
I think for some people that will work, right?
Yep.
You know, for simpler cases, for newer cases, things like that. For me, the benefit of coming in here was the fact that I was going to doctor's appointments. Going to 1 or 2 doctor's appointments a day was a full-time job.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm driving across town, and it's really hard to do that when you're concussed. You built a clinic where it's all really streamlined, and so you're just going from, you know, hour appointment to appointment to appointment, you know, back to back to back to back to back.
And you're not managing it.
Right.
All I need you to do is go to the therapy, get
Just
put
show.
back into your patient lounge, and then you get pulled for the next thing. The other thing that you couldn't do on your own, Scotty, is you couldn't have all of that concentrated care in a 2-week period.
No, that's exactly it. That's what I'm saying is, like, it would have taken me 6 months to go to that number of visits and see that number of professionals. And so if you're someone out there who said, you know, I've tried this on my own and it's not really doing anything, consider coming in here.
Yeah.
You know, you guys have a bunch of innovations that are as simple as really good scheduling software for making sure that, you know,
People are where they need to be.
people are where they need to be, which, you know, when one of the interviews I did last time, you know, I asked what's your favorite piece of technology, and the answer was our scheduling software. And I was expecting, oh, you know, we really love this therapy device or something like that.
Yeah,
And he said, no, it's the fact that I can take 40 clinicians and 19 patients and make sure that everybody gets what they need based on all these different criteria, you know, and that nobody's sitting idle. So what's a good way for people to reach out and get in contact with you if they decide that this, you know, this sounds like the right treatment for them?
www.cognitivefxusa.com.
USA. Yeah.
Ever since we started Cognitive Effects, which was like 12 years ago, we've always had complimentary consultations. We do not charge for consultations. And the reason we do that is because I want to make sure that you are a good fit, we are a good fit, and that the symptoms that you're struggling with are things that I think we can have success with.
And you guys say no to people.
Some of the people that we do not accept are people that have really severe addiction issues. If they are struggling with significant suicidality, it is very hard to work on the brain when the brain is wired for survival or addiction. I have sent patients to go get some addiction treatment. Once you're stable, then you can come in and then we can treat. But if you are curious, the best thing is to contact us. You could just fill out paperwork. The paperwork is very simple. It's online, okay? And then you can schedule your complimentary consultation, and then we have a talk, and that's the easiest way to get in.
Well, thank you so much. This is fantastic, and I hope this helps a bunch of people.
Well, again, thank you for really shedding light on kind of this problem that we have here that goes really under the radar, and to not just accept that answer that, you know.
And I think that would be my number one message is I've met patients here who are decades out from their injury. So it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's never too late to make these changes.
We have 80-year-olds in clinic.
That's crazy. who have had injuries for a long time.
Had injuries for decades and then maybe keep having injuries. And part of the things I screen for as well is your motivation and that drive to get better. Because if I have that drive and I see it in your eyes and I know that you're willing to work, then I know that your brain can still change.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure, Scotty.
Likewise.
A huge thank you to Cognitive Effects for having me for the set of 3 booster days and for my original treatment. If you'd like to talk to them, you can get a free consultation by going to their website, cognitivefxusa.com. I'll put a link down in the description below. I can't speak highly enough about them. They literally saved my life. I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for the treatment that I've gotten. And I really believe that they're at the forefront of concussion recovery. Thank you for watching. I hope you got a lot out of this. I'll see you again soon.